Welcome everyone. My name is Peter Langford. I'm the Director of Voice Project. Welcome to our breakfast. This is the second of 3 breakfasts we're holding in which we get to feature Mission Australia's change journey. We had Brisbane last week, and on Friday I think there may still be a spot or 2 in Melbourne. If you know anyone and get inspired by this presentation, you can send them down to Melbourne. But we've had 400 registrations across the 3 breakfasts. And Sydney sold out. There were people wait-listed who couldn't get in for the lovely foods. I hope you have enjoyed the foods. I know you'll enjoy the presentation. It's a privilege to be able to share the story of Mission Australia and to have Catherine Yeomans and Mark Newton present this morning as well. Before I get into their presentation, just a couple of things. Mobile phones, please turn them onto silent. And I'll just take 2 minutes to give you a little bit of background to Voice Project for those of you who don't know us, and the Change Challenge Awards, which is the reason Mission Australia is being recognised this morning. Many of you know about Voice Project, so I apologise for telling you the things you already know, but for those of you who don't, it's an opportunity for us to get our message out a little more. Our core purpose is improving organisations by giving people a voice. We specialise in workplace surveys, employee surveys, 360 surveys, customer surveys and other ad hoc needs. Key points of difference. Long-term customer relationships. I know a lot of organisations say that, but we do take that very seriously. 3/4 of our work each year, we're a team of 15 people, reasonable amount of volume of work that we're doing, especially this year. It's a very busy year for us. 3/4 of our work each year is with repeat clients or new work with those repeat clients. So I think that reflects the longevity we have with the organisations that we work with. We're also very pleased with the customer satisfaction scores we got recently. We survey our customers twice yearly. We had 60 or 70 or so responded within the last 6-month period. We had a Net Promoter Score of 79%, which we're very happy with. So very proud of that kind of outcome and the relationships that we have with our clients. Second differentiator, flexible solutions. We have offerings ranging from a free survey, so we have a free team or small organisation survey that's available to anyone. There really are no strings attached to that if you want to use it, other than you take it as it comes without changing the content to it. But it's available online. You can get the survey up and running very quickly. So if you're wanting to assess engagement, people practices within your organisation, that offer is out there for anyone. So just speak to me or any of our consultants about getting that going. It can even be for clients who want to sort of dip in and do just a little pulse survey with some of your teams or departments between projects. But on the other end, we've run projects of nearly 400,000 people. So we've got the capability and the sophistication of running very large, complex projects. And last point, grounded in scientific research. We come from an academic background. I'm a past academic at Macquarie University. I was the director of the OrgPsych program, and my research was in organisational culture and leadership, and it was that research that led into the commercial opportunities with the clients that we were working with on a research basis. So we've been in business now for 15 years. Since 2002, we've now delivered more than 2 million surveys to over 3,000 organisations, about 1,500 commercial projects that we've been working in. So a little bit of a background to Voice Project. In terms of what's happening at Voice Project in recent times, we've been putting a lot of effort and investing very heavily in our online surveying tool in terms of the automating the collection and also the reporting for our surveys. And a little more recently, we've been refreshing our reports as well. So the feedback that we're getting from clients is the need to keep those reports looking contemporary. So we've gone through that process with our engagement surveys and recently been rolling it out with our leadership surveys as well. So we're constantly on the move and hopefully continuing to improve the service that we're delivering. Also, with that free survey that we mentioned, we're going to be revising that content a little bit. It's sort of slightly experimental in terms of keeping it a little shorter, but focusing on some core items and also some new concepts that we'll be trying out with that survey as well. So that'll be refreshed fairly soon. Oh, skipped a page. Change Challenge Awards, and that is why we're here this morning. it's prompted that recognition of our clients who are achieving substantial change. What turns us on at Voice Project is seeing our clients improve. There are lots of awards out there that recognise top performers in terms of levels of employee engagements. We wanted something that was going to be a little bit different. So those awards have their place and they're great to recognise those high performers. But I guess what turns us on a little more at Voice Project is actually seeing change in organisations. So these awards recognise organisations that are achieving the greatest amount of change between surveys. The awards themselves are open to organisations, departments and teams, and obviously to be part of this you need to complete a repeat survey of some sort with us, whether it be that free survey or any other kind of survey with us. So you had to have 2 surveys. But finalists or shortlisted organisations also had to submit an application process where there was quite a detailed, we asked quite a lot of questions about the number of KPIs and how they've changed between those surveying periods, and also quite a lot of questions about the change journey that organisations went on. What were the challenges that they faced? What were the achievements? How did they do that? And then that went to a panel of 4 judges, which included myself, but also included Susan Henry, who is the head of people and culture at Starlight. So Susan is here this morning. Susan, where are you? Susan over in the back there, so thank you for your contribution. And indeed, Starlight was our inaugural winner of the Change Challenge Awards a few years ago. We also had Vanessa Fudge from Leading Well and Professor Sherry Ostroff. We're establishing a research partnership with the University of South Australia to keep our research side of Voice Project going. She's the head of the Centre for Workplace Excellence, and she was the other judge. So we had the survey results, we had the application, we had the judges go through that. As a result of that process, the finalists, we had 2 categories this year, large and a small to medium category. In the large, the finalists were Mission Australia, University of Southern Queensland, their academic division, and the University of Sydney, DVC Registrar. On the small category, so this was essentially groups of a head count of less than 200, and it could be a department or it could be a team. We had ADSI, Home Living Australia Community Support Workers. We had Avid Group, and we had Spinal Cord Injuries Australia Marketing Team. So in the promotion for the breakfast, you know that Mission Australia won the large awards. So there's no real build-up or drum roll that I can do there. You don't know, though, and I'll come to Mission Australia, I'll introduce them in a moment, but you don't know that the winner for the small-medium category was ADSI Home Living. In there, it was for their community support workers, and it was a very impressive story with they ended up with an engagement score of 95%, but there was a 14% improvement within 1 year for that group. There was an average improvement across all of their survey questions of 15%, and some of the questions were improving in the high 30% within 1 year turnaround. And this was during a time when there was a pay decrease for these people. So, and the moral behind the story, we won't unfortunately hear the detailed story from ADSI this morning, but the moral behind the story, there was an enormous contribution from the CEO and their human resources manager in involving that team in the conversations about how they needed to change, who wasn't going to be there in the next periods, and what was needed to improve their change. So it's quite an impressive story. So very briefly, I'd like to invite Colin Henson, who's the human resources manager for ADSI Home Living, to come up and accept their award. Now we get on to the main feature for the morning, and we'll hear the story from Mission Australia. Just to give a little bit of background to sort of why this is impressive, you'll get some sense of the scope of the change that they achieved. But this is a large organisation, about 2,800 employees, 3,700 volunteers. You've got about 500 sites or something like work units out there. This is a change achieved across a large diverse organisations, and they're not all central. Managing to achieve change over such a group of people who are out there is very impressive. The second thing that is impressive about what was achieved by Mission Australia, the nature of these awards, we're awarding organisations that are achieving large amounts of change. Now, Mission Australia was within a whisker of winning this award last year. And indeed, if you did attend the breakfast, you'll remember that they received a highly commended award. It was Downer Group that received the award last year. But Mission Australia received highly commended because they were so close. Now, if you take into account that the recognition is for achieving large change, in this case over a large organisation, and they've achieved this 2 years running, that gives you some sense of how impressive this change is that they've achieved. So, without any further ado, we have Catherine Yeomans and Mark Newton who will present their story this morning. I'll introduce first Catherine Yeomans, who's the CEO of Mission Australia, to come and accept their award and start their presentation. So, thank you, Catherine.
Wonderful. Well, good morning, everyone. And I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we're meeting, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and pay my respects to their elders, past, present and future, for they hold the memories, the culture and dreams of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. We recognise and respect their cultural heritage, beliefs and continual relationship with the land, and we recognise the importance of their young people who truly are the leaders of the future. Well, thanks so much for joining us this morning. It's really a privilege to have the opportunity to share the journey with you that Mission Australia has been on over the last few years. And for those of you who don't know much about Mission Australia, we're a non-denominational Christian charity. It's been helping vulnerable Australians move towards independence for more than 155 years. Every day we support people nationwide by combating homelessness, assisting disadvantaged families and children, addressing mental health issues, fighting substance dependencies, and much more. And we've taken the liberty of just preparing a short video to show you a little bit about what the need is in our community and what we do to assist.
I am here and you are here and we are here and we are here and we are loved. And if you cry, I'll cry with you. And if you laugh, well, I'll laugh too. There's nothing that I wouldn't do. With you, I am home. With you, I am free. With you, I am whole. With you, I am me. 100 hearts, 100 hearts, 100 hearts are dancing in the sea. And here you are with me.
So a bit more about our journey. When I was appointed to the role of CEO in 2014, I was asked by the Mission Australia Board to refresh our strategy. Yes, we had a strategy, but it was so broad that you could line up any service underneath it. And yes, we had business plans, but KPIs were not being used. And yes, we had a set of values. And those values are definitely what drives the work that we do. Our values are compassion, integrity, respect, perseverance, and celebration. We believe that they are the right values for our organisation, and we know that our staff really connect with them deeply. And thankfully, in our organisation, our staff know what our values are. In fact, not only do they know what the values are, they were looking for them to be enacted in behaviours. But part of the challenge back in 2014 was that there wasn't a consistent view on what living the values actually looked like. What did it really mean when we said we had a value of compassion or integrity and so on? Without agreement on the behaviours that would actually demonstrate our values, sadly, there were some times when those values may have indeed seemed little more than a poster on the wall. And as you'll know, there's always indicators across an organisation that will alert us to the need for change. And this was the case in early 2014. Teams were working in silos. Not only that, but there were also silos within teams. In some areas, management was seen by staff as being disconnected, leading to perceptions along the lines of it's my way or it's the highway. Our health and safety numbers were very high, and this was accepted. Our exit surveys did not paint a very pretty picture. Things clearly weren't good. Yet thankfully, our staff were passionate about the work that they did. They're highly skilled and motivated to make a difference with the people with whom they work. They kept running successful programs that were impacting lives. But nevertheless, we knew things needed to change. And so it was in the first half of 2014 that we worked through an extensive process of engaging with our staff in a strategic review, including holding a number of open forums with staff and leaders across the organisation. We asked for feedback from staff, frontline managers and senior management. What quickly became clear is that if we wanted to be able to achieve our key goal of reducing homelessness and strengthening communities, it would be essential for us to create a values-driven culture that enabled our people to perform at their best. We were so convinced that this was essential for us to be truly effective in meeting our organisational goal that we made this one of our 6 strategic directions. By incorporating culture into our strategic plan, we wanted to ensure that we both focused on creating a values-led culture and that we allocated resources in order to achieve it. We realised that an important place to start was to strengthen our leadership capability. We set a new direction for our leaders. We needed them to take all aspects of our leadership seriously so that we could meet both the internal and the external challenges that we were facing. This included advocating for those in need, ensuring that we delivered client-focused services, that we built long-term financial sustainability, that we managed risks effectively, and very importantly, established a servant-hearted approach to people leadership. As an organisation that's all about people, people leadership is critical. As you all know, it's essential that modelling behaviours we expect to see in an organisation must start at the top. So my team and I agreed to hold each other accountable for how we performed our duties. We were very clear it should never just be what we do, it should also be about how we do it. And no matter how long someone's been in a leadership role, there's always something new to learn. We committed to displaying servant leadership, and that meant everyone, from my role as CEO to frontline leaders, engaged in a new leadership program that we invested in, including programs for frontline leaders and team-based programs, so we could truly make Mission Australia a great place to work. So a number of important things happened in quick succession. In early 2014, following some changes at the leadership level, a newly formed executive team established a clear set of strategic directions with an overarching goal. As a people organisation, it was important to have HR at the executive table. A new strategic plan was developed after extensive consultation with staff, and we then conducted a staff engagement survey as a marker for our culture. And we set about building a great place to work. It has always been important to me to hear directly from staff, to hear what they had to say about the barriers facing the people that they were working with, to understand what some of the issues were in the communities in which they were working, and to be open to feedback about what we are doing as an organisation. What are we doing well? What should we be doing more of? Is there anything that we should be doing differently? By taking the time to meet with staff, our staff took the opportunity to say things that they hadn't said before, or perhaps they felt hadn't been heard. There was an open invitation to provide feedback, and staff responded accordingly. They wanted to see change, and we were giving them the opportunity to speak. And they did. Our 2014 staff survey had over 400 pages of comments. Some of the comments made us take immediate action. Staff had a voice, and they were taking the opportunity to speak. As an executive team, we started spending more time out in the services, visiting local sites, meeting with and listening to staff. Let me hand over now to one of those executives, Mark Newton, and he's here today to talk a little bit more about our change journey over the last few years. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Catherine. It's fantastic to be here today to tell you a bit more about our change journey at Mission Australia. In 2014, as Catherine has mentioned, we had a marker survey to confirm some of the early indicators that we were seeing in the organisation, and to get us start to focus on the areas that we need to change. So let's take a look at some of those areas now. As you can see, the survey pointed to a number of areas that we need to focus on, and what you can't see is the 400 pages of comments that staff told us about that were very, very revealing. Staff gave us a very clear examples of an unhealthy culture. They also said they were very connected to their work and very passionate about this, but they were confused about the strategic direction of the organisation. In terms of leadership, they were connected to their local manager very much, but they had less trust in senior management and the executive team. They felt that our values were just words on a wall and weren't being seen in behaviours. This was very much our marker survey in terms of what and where we need to change. We needed an open door on two-way communications with our staff, consciously listening and authentically acting on what we heard. The executive team and people leaders need to build a deeper level of trust and be more accessible to staff. Leaders needed to live the values rather than just espousing them. So we listened to our staff and we became very focused on three areas: building a values-driven culture, developing our leaders, and building a great place to work. Let's have a look at 2015 results. So you can see in these results that staff told us that we were heading in the right direction. But we were focused on building systemic and sustainable change. So we stayed focused on building a values-driven culture, developing our leaders, and building a great place to work. As you can see, staff confirmed in these results that we were definitely heading in the right direction. But let me quickly, proudly go back for a moment and show you those results again. So we've achieved great success in our staff engagement, and as Peter pointed out, that's why we're here today. And I'm immensely proud of the work that all of our staff have done and continue to do. Through our staff engagement surveys, they're being able to tell us what we're doing well and areas that we could improve. At Mission Australia, we know we're on a journey and we continue to build a great place to work in a purpose-driven, values-led organisation. And it's become clear to me that when you take action that reflects the values and the purpose of an organisation and connects with the experiences of staff at the front line, you can inspire them to go on a journey with you. So the question you're probably interested in, how do we make the change? We listen to our people, and as I've said earlier, we built a values-driven performance culture. We focused on developing our leaders, and we focused on building a great place to work. So let me take you through each of these in a bit more detail now. Our values. I imagine that you all have values on your walls. We did as well, that reflect what's important to you as an organisation. But rather than allowing our values to be moulded into whatever behaviours people saw fit, we took the extra step of defining our values into a set of clear behaviours. Values without behaviours are just aspirational. So we engaged with our staff to determine the behaviours that need to sit behind each of these values. And after extensive consultation, we built a clear set of behaviours. And as a result, staff are now much clearer about what each value means in action. This was important because it brought our values to life and made them much more measurable. On the slide, you can not only see the values defined, but you can now clearly see the behaviours that we expect to see when the values are actioned. We know our staff are drawn to values. Our staff engagement surveys clearly reveal that staff feel passionately about them. They identify with them, and they judge their colleagues and their leaders and managers against them. So it's safe to say that we're a values-focused organisation, and this has been very deliberate. This is because, from my perspective, it's our values framework that sets us apart. The people who come to work in a not-for-profit organisation like ours are and must be motivated by their determination to make a difference. They have a desire to find an organisation that will match with their skills, what they do, and their values, who they are. So ensuring alignment between these two things is an imperative that we all have in front of us. We take these values seriously. We hire against them. We no hire against them. We manage performance against them. We celebrate them, and we have them embedded into our performance management system. Turn the page. Another critical investment for us was developing our leadership capability. But this wasn't focused on developing normal leadership skills that you would imagine. This was focused very much on being a leader. How are you turning up as a leader? How are you presenting yourself as a leader? How are you bringing yourself to this critical role? How are you being a leader? We set about defining what being a leader was at Mission Australia, and we started with the core principle that Catherine alluded to earlier of servant leadership. As the definition on the slide suggests, this is a different kind of leadership. It's different to traditional leadership, where there's an accumulation and exercise of power at the top. The servant leader shares power, puts the needs of others first, and helps people develop and perform at their best. And I can honestly say, standing before you, that's how we operate as an executive team. And that's how I see other leaders operating as leaders in the organisation. And I think that's what makes a big difference to us. We developed a leadership narrative, and this included a series of leadership workshops that were conducted and focused on being a leader. We also set expectations for leaders. We asked our leaders to focus on all aspects of leadership, on themselves, on their people, on the financials, on community, on their partnerships. They understood that they had to be role models because leaders cast long shadows. Whatever a leader does gives permission for anyone beneath them to do the same. We held workshops where leaders from all over the organisation learnt together the principles of servant leadership, how to be more conscious as a leader, and what was expected of them as leaders. And in these workshops, as Catherine alluded to, Catherine attended with other leaders in the organisation. We actually went right across the country to attend workshops with our frontline staff so that we were all learning the same thing at the same time. We still conduct these workshops today to make sure that all of our leaders are captured as they come into the organisation and understand what it is to be a servant leader. The third critical area that we focused on was building a great place to work. We introduced cultural change workshops that were designed centrally but delivered in local, intact teams. These workshops enabled local workplaces to discuss the staff engagement surveys, and if the number of people in that local workplace was too small, we gave them the survey results above them to protect anonymity. They would talk about the survey results, they'd talk about the values and behaviours and what that meant to them in their local workplace. They talked about feedback and how to give and receive feedback and how to resolve conflict. They were very impactful workshops. They all took different paths, but they were all values and behaviours focused. And for the last 12 months, the workshops have been included as part of our induction program. So the question is, did the investment that we had in these three areas pay off? What you see in front of you is the results of the last three surveys that we've conducted using Voice Project. Here's the breakdown of those three trends. Our deliberate efforts are clearly paying off. The magnitude of the change is clear to see on the slide in front of you. But I need to point out that at this time that we were conducting these surveys, particularly in 2015, we also needed to move our employment services business and 600 staff out of the organisation to other employment providers. So the change you see in front of you is even more significant during a period of turmoil. I believe the reasons why the change management had increased so significant during this turbulent time can be put down to our investments in building a great place to work, in building a values-driven culture, and focusing on developing our leadership capability. So it's true that the changes haven't come about by chance, but as a result of deliberate focus on building our culture. As you all know, your organisation will have a culture. The question is whether it's the culture you want and is attached to your purpose, or whether it's the culture you have by default. We have chosen to be a purpose-driven, values-led culture, and this has been deliberate. In fact, that statement is now on the front page of our strategic plan for 2017-2020. And staff are now saying that they feel more engaged in the direction and purpose of Mission Australia, that we really do hire based on the values, and we live our values through behaviours. They like the level of communication between leaders and staff. They've told us that their trust in senior management and the execs has increased, and they feel more supported. There's a culture of respect and a spirit of cooperation and collaboration they can see in the organisation, a spirit that you work for Mission Australia rather than a function, a department or a state. And as I mentioned earlier, these changes haven't come about by chance, but as a direct result of our deliberate actions on building a culture. We will continue to build our culture at Mission. We're not done. We will continue to build a culture that has a strong leadership team who are unified by what is best for our organisation and our clients. A culture that's underpinned by values and behaviours which demand strong trust and teamwork. A focus on strategic goals and priorities that provide all our staff with a clear understanding of what is important to Mission Australia, and where collaboration is embraced. And how are we going to maintain that change? We're going to keep doing what we're doing. Most of all, being authentic and holding people accountable for living the values. By listening to and communicating with our staff and building action plans based on the trends that we see. And continuing to develop our leaders and committing to continuing to build a great place to work. So we'll continue to build our culture clearly with our purpose in mind and our values etched in our fabric. We're about to undertake the next engagement survey in July of this year, so it'll be interesting to see how we're travelling. But most importantly, we will continue to listen and to lead. Thank you.